Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, warning of the potential far-reaching threats of the al-Qaeda-inspired group that is taking control of regions of Syria and Iraq. It's time now for our Sunday group. Nina Easton of Fortune magazine, Mara Liasson from National Public Radio, Fox News contributor Liz Cheney, and Charles Lane of The Washington Post. Welcome. Good to see you all this Sunday.
Good to be here.
Nina, I'll start with you. General Dempsey saying there is a real long-term threat to the U.S. So what do we do next with regard to Iraq?
Well, actually, it's not just long-term. It's actually the White House now is worried about short-term threat. I think it kind of got buried this week that security measures at airports internationally are being increased. The White House is really worried that these American passport-holding jihadists can come in legally. And by the way, they have the ability now to produce bombs that can get through our security measures. So we're on the case trying to look for ways to stop those kind of bombs to get on airplanes. This whole rise of ISIS, which is now, by the way, calling itself the Islamic State, has become a national security threat. It was a long time ago, but it's a clear and present danger.
Yeah, Mar, how does the administration balance that against the president being very clear he wants us out of Iraq? That was always part of his campaigning, and he's carried that out. But now we do have interests that are involved there with the rise of ISIS, the Islamic State. How does the administration thread that needle?
Well, he's already sent up to 750 American military personnel to Iraq. He says that's not reoccupying Iraq. We're going there to help the Iraqi military. The problem is that the new vision that the president laid out at West Point was about helping partners around the world. We're not going to do this ourselves. We're going to shore up the terrorist fighting capabilities of our partners. Well, that can't happen. We just saw what happened to our partner, the Iraqi military, who pretty much collapsed in the face of ISIS. So the question for the administration is there a strategy, short of reoccupying Iraq, that can prevent this state, Islamic State, whatever we're calling it, from becoming a safe haven, like Afghanistan pre-9/11, for terrorists who can threaten us? And the administration says, well, there are ways to do this. You know, look at Somalia or Yemen or the territories on the border of Pakistan with drones, with, intelligence. We're able to contain them. It might be a little harder to do that in Iraq.
And we're seeing poll numbers overall. The president is suffering with regard to public perception of his performance. But when we talk about foreign policy, Liz, he's hitting all-time lows. Is there a chance here for him to come up with a strategy that redeems his credibility in that area?
You know, it's difficult. I think the American people are looking at what's happening, sort of seeing a region in flames, and looking at the extent to which, there are a lot of debates about Iraq, which people have gone over and will continue to go over. But at the end of the day, when this president took over, Iraq was stable. And you saw our Ambassador Crocker there talking about the extent to which al-Qaeda had really been defeated. And so for the president to then decide he's going to walk away, and to have this be the aftermath, I think people are very worried about it, and they're worried about what's happening in Afghanistan and the fact that he may well be, he says he's going to go down essentially the same path there. So that he will turn things around, because I think that turning around the poll numbers would be a sign that he actually was exercising some leadership and moving in a direction that was going to keep us safe, but I'm not optimistic.
Well, and Chuck, we have the request now in from the administration for the $500 million to help in Syria, where ISIS has taken many strongholds as well. And there are questions about whether it's going to make a difference at this point. Is it too late?
Well, that $500 million, assuming it's all well spent and it works and it goes for the purposes it's intended to, if you really think about it, is money that will go to prolonging the war in Syria by creating a force strong enough to counter ISIS. That's the theory of it. So I don't even think anyone is claiming that that money is going to bring this all to a conclusion. What we have is a giant sort of strategic vacuum that goes almost all the way from Aleppo in Syria to Baghdad in Iraq. And everybody is fighting over it. The Saudis are involved, Assad's regime, the Iranians are huge players, these guys from ISIS. It's a complete mess. And the United States, unless it wanted to get in a huge way with all kinds of hundreds of thousands of troops, which we're not going to do, we're kind of reduced to this kind of measure of attempting to manipulate the balance from a long distance through proxies we don't entirely trust, going to Mara's point, and so forth and so on. I think at best, it's a prolonged, difficult struggle, and I wouldn't bet on any outcome of it.
Well, and Nouri al-Maliki says he's staying. He wants a third term.
Right.
Does he survive? Can he be helpful in any way at this
Well,
point?
he's not helpful, and part of the reason we don't have troops there was pressure on him from Iran not to allow the security agreement that would keep troops here. And I think Chuck is right. There are no good options, but one option has to be, and this was run by the White House by his own advisors, including Hillary Clinton and Panetta 2 years ago, is to vet and arm the Free Syrian Army, because they have gone toe-to-toe with ISIS in Syria. And so you've got to, there's a lot of fronts that you have to work on.
The other problem you've got with the situation with Maliki now, though, is a priorities issue, because you've got a number of people saying Maliki needs to go, Maliki needs to form a government that's more representative. That's not our big problem right now. Our big problem right now is ISIS. And we need to be able to say we're going to separate out everything else, and we're going to go forward in a way that, frankly, we ought to have been doing airstrikes already that defeats ISIS. And after we've been in there defeating ISIS, we'll then have the credibility to go back to Maliki and say, okay, look, you need to be much more representative. Perhaps we need another prime minister. But that shouldn't be the issue we're focused on today.
Or if at that point, if Maliki feels secure because ISIS is no longer a threat, that he can tell us, we don't care about your demands, that I'd be more inclusive.
But ISIS is the threat to us.
It's true. And I think the most we're going to be able to accomplish, if anything, maybe is deny that space to ISIS. But to build something positive in that space, I'm not so sure.